Shalom. I want to start off by giving all glory and honor to YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM REKAKWADASH. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. And peace and salutations to the hopeful elect who are continuing to fight and teach this thing of ours in truth and sincerity. I'm the brother Manatazak with GMS Ancient of Days in Los Angeles, currently teaching with the Akim in Sherman Oaks. And today through the Spirit I want to get into a lesson on predestination and how us that are doing this work in truth and sincerity have been ordained to this lot through the Spirit. Okay, and that's a beautiful calling and a beautiful responsibility. Okay, because what that means is, as the scriptures say, the spirit of the prophets is subject to the prophets. So if we have been called into this marvelous light here in these last days, okay, then we are falling into the lot that we had in our different reincarnations in times past. Okay, meaning back, incarnation in the flesh. Because the scriptures tell us that every third and fourth generation, okay, we come back in the flesh, and we serve out our punishment, from previous lifetimes, like the different judgments. Okay, and that's a beautiful thing, because here we are in the last days, looking at the fulfillment of these final prophecies, and you have men that are standing upon their watch, risking their lives and their freedoms to bring out this untainted and unadulterated word of YAHAWASHI in all truth and sincerity, speaking the bitter and speaking the sweet, all in one tongue. Okay, and we're doing this by obedience, and we're doing this by a spiritual calling. Okay, because at the end of the day, there are men that are walking this earth now, here today, in these last days, that have the 100% truth, and we here at Great Millstone believe that is us, from the apostles and elders on down, of course. Okay, and our primary message when we go out and preach this word in truth and sincerity is to reach the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, which, pursuant to prophecy and pursuant to the scriptures, okay, are you so-called Negroes, so-called Hispanics, and so-called Native Americans. This message is also to the speckled bird that is mingled amongst the nations, whose seed line through their father goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay? If this word that we're teaching resonates with you, then regardless of what you look like and what language you speak, you too are an Israelite, possibly of the elect. Okay? And it's important to establish that here in these last days, because contrary to popular belief, when YAHAWASHI returns, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, he is not coming to save all who believe. He's not even coming to save every single individual from his own nation, him being from the tribe of Judah. He is coming to save the elect of the 12 tribes. Okay? And in retrospect, that is a very small number, as the scriptures detail, a very small remnant. So the point of this lesson is to show you, okay, through predestination, okay, it is a very important lot that we've been assigned. Lord willing, we endure until the end, because at the end of the day, all we're doing is playing out the will of YAHAWASHI. And that in of itself should put a healthy dose of fear within you. Because if you came into this truth and you fell out, if you came into this truth and took your hand off the plow, and then picked it back up, then took your hand off the plow again, if you haven't been diligent, if you haven't been brotherly, if you haven't been charitable, if you haven't been sincere, okay? All these different things have already been predetermined by a decision made in the spirit world that we're only playing out in what we perceive as reality. And that in of itself is power. It's to be greatly feared and greatly respected. That's why the scriptures say, he that endureth until the end, the same shall be saved. And Lord willing, us doing this work in truth and sincerity are counted amongst that hallowed number that are delivered here in these last days. Now, with that being said, I want to begin in the book of Sirach, which is in the Apocrypha, Ecclesiasticus, and Lord willing, this lesson is edifying to the hopeful elect. This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 33, verse 13, the book of Sirach in the Apocrypha. It says, as the clay is in the potter's hand, the clay being symbolic for us as human beings, if you will, okay? And the potter's hand obviously being that of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh. It says, as the clay is in the potter's hand to fashion it at his pleasure, right? So if you were an artist and you have the markers, you fashion your image to your pleasure, okay? Or if you're drafted on the computer board, you know, whatever prompt that you type up is displayed with your image, just as the potter with the clay in his hand. He fashions that clay to his liking because he's the one in control. It's the same thing with us. YAHAWASHI is known as the Father of Spirits. Therefore, whatever lot he assigns us to is assigned to us by his will. And who are we to question or fight against it? Okay? It says, as the clay is in the potter's hand to fashion it at his pleasure, so man is in the hand of him that made him, to render them as liketh him best. Okay? And we understand that out of the 18 nations that were created from YAHAWASHI and all the respected tribes that spider web from them, okay, YAHAWASHI is only dealing with one nation, and that is the nation of Israel, which are comprised of 12 tribes but make up one nation. And we identify them today primarily as you so-called Negroes, so-called Hispanics, and so-called Native Americans, which you see on the 12 tribe sign that we bring out week in and week out on the highways and hedges. Okay, as is commanded of us to do, pursuant to Ezekiel the 37th chapter. That's prophecy being fulfilled. Okay, I'm going to read Ecclesiastes chapter 33, verse 13 again. It says, as the clay is in the potter's hand to fashion it at his pleasure, so man is in the hand of him that made him, to render them as liketh him best. Let's get Romans 9, beginning at verse 21. Showing you that all the prophets spoke the same thing and had this understanding of YAHAWASHI being above all. This is Romans 9, beginning at verse 20. It says, nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against the Most High? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? So think about that with the analogy that I gave earlier. If you were an artist and you're drawing the image of your heart onto a piece of paper, if that image was to become animated, does that image have the right to ask you who made it why you made him like this? Why didn't you make him taller? Why didn't you make him more muscular? Why did you make him this color? What right does the creation have to ask of the creator who gave it life? Okay? And this is exactly what Apostle Paul is conveying in the book of Romans. Okay? I'm going to read it again. Romans 9, beginning at verse 20. It says, actually I'll begin at verse 19. It says, thou wilt say then unto me, why doth he yet find fault? For who hath resisted his will? Nay, but O man, who art thou that replies against the Most High? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another to dishonor? Okay, so that's the purpose of the Most High. He's in complete control. That vessel of honor is symbolic for the protagonists of this story, which are the Israelites. Okay, that vessel of dishonor, okay, is symbolic for the antagonists of this story, which is Esau Edom. The protagonist being the good guys or the hero, the antagonist being the bad guys or the villain. Okay. It says, verse 22, what if the Most High, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction? Okay. So he's enduring all this sin and turmoil and death that Esau Edom is bringing to this planet because he's about to show his power through miracles, through divine intervention, through his people, the Israelites. Verse 23, and that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy, which he hath afore prepared unto glory. Okay? Which he have afore prepared unto glory, meaning this was already written and already predestined to play out this way. We're just living out in this reality, going through the motions. But if it's already written about, that means the prophets have seen it, which means that in another dimension, this has already happened. Okay? And that's the power of YAHAWASHI. Verse 24, even us, whom he hath called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. This is a question. But we understand that these Gentiles are Israelite foreigners. Just as we go on the highways and hedges and beckon to our people that are in a Babylonian state of mind, that are still calling themselves African American, that are still calling themselves Hispanic, that are still calling themselves Native American, by the proverbs and bywords put on us by our oppressors. We're going out to break those strongholds and bring you back into the fold as Hebrew Israelites from your respective tribes. Judah, Benjamin, Levi, all the way down to Issachar, respectfully. Okay? Let's get Isaiah 29 and 16. The book of Isaiah, chapter 29, verse 16, and it reads, surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, he hath no understanding? Okay, so this is already showing you by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, 3 different prophets that are speaking about the power that YAHAWASHI has over his creation, and how it is foolish of us to think ourselves on the level to question him on the lot that he has put us in. Which brings me back to my opening statement, the great responsibility put on us that have this breath of life, this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Okay, because it shows that YAHAWASHI has entrusted us with this word to preach to his people here in these last days. So the Israelites that come into this thing and don't take heed to the importance of their calling, it makes you question their loyalty. It makes you question their sincerity. It makes you question, do they even fear YAHAWASHI and this gift that has been given unto us? This mercy that has been continually, I should say, shown to us. Okay, this is not a light thing. As the old saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. Understanding these precepts in truth and sincerity is a great power indeed, and is likened on the spiritual power. The seals have been loosed, and we have been given this understanding, and not everybody that is an Israelite can say that. Which goes to show me that YAHAWASHI has always only dealt with a very small remnant, his elect. And those are the ones that have been predestined to receive this word and understand it in truth and sincerity. Okay. Let's get let's get Romans 8, beginning of verse 29. Sticking with the topic. Romans 8, beginning of verse 29, it says, for whom did he foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. That image of his son is going back to that same image that the AHCH spoke to the Adamites back in Genesis. Let us make man in our image. That means let us give them the law, statutes, and commandments to keep them separate from the rest of these nations. That's how YAHAWASHI distinguishes those who are his. He gave the law, statutes, and commandments only to one nation, the Israelites, to keep them separate or to keep them holy. Okay? And this is the separation between the elect and the rest of Israel. I'm going to read it again. Romans 8 and 29. It says, for whom did he foreknew, he also predestined. He also did predestinate. Those that he foreknew are the AHCH in the beginning. Okay? The firstborn among many brethren, as the scripture says. YAHAWASHI is the firstborn among many brethren. Okay? The 144,000 that are coming back into their lot here in these last days. It says to be conformed to the image of his son. So they're going to follow the law, statutes, and commandments just as their brother, the firstborn, YAHAWASHI did. Of course, he was the only one that was able to keep it in perfection. Okay? But those same laws, statutes, and commandments that YAHAWASHI kept perfectly were going to be put in the inward parts of those same AHCH that YAHAWASHI foreknew and predestined to their lot. They're going to be the first ones that are going to be changed and get that body that's likened unto YAHAWASHI. Romans 8:29 again, it says, for whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate, to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called. And whom he called, them he also justified. And whom he justified, them he also glorified. Okay. Skipping down to verse 33, it says, who shall lay anything to the charge of the Most High's elect? It is the Most High that justifieth. Why? Because he is the potter. Okay. And he chose who he chose to be conformed to the image of his Son, which is a very small number indeed. So who wouldn't want to be called amongst the brethren of YAHAWASHI, the only begotten Son? It should stand without question. Okay. That us doing this work in truth and sincerity are fighting to be part of that number. Okay. Let's get Ephesians 1, beginning at verse 4. This is the book of Ephesians, chapter 1, beginning at verse 4. It says, according as he had chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love, having predestined us unto the adoption of children by Yahawashi Mashiach to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. Okay, see that? And this was written by Apostle Paul to the Israelites that were scattered in Asia Minor, the book of Ephesians. Okay, just as we go on the highways and hedges and preach to all the Israelites and across the globe, we're speaking to the Israelite foreigners. And the elect, regardless of what you look like, once again, are going to hear this message and they're going to take heed. And once that last number is sealed, okay, the number that Yahweh Shemashah requires, then the destruction is going to come. But with that, a great grand deliverance. Okay? And this is what we look forward to. This is what we're hoping for. Okay? Since we're in the book of Ephesians, let's jump down to verse 11. Actually, let's jump to verse 9. You know what? I might as well just read the whole thing. Continuing on in verse 6. It says, to the praise of the glory of his grace, wherein he hath made us accepted in the beloved, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins according to the riches of his grace. Meaning this is only for the elect. Okay, true indeed for all Israel, but it begins with the hopeful elect, those that make it out of this destruction that's forthcoming. Verse 8, wherein he hath abounded towards us in all wisdom and prudence, having made known unto us the mystery of his will, according to his good pleasure, which he hath purposed in himself. So this was only revealed to the elect. As Amos 3:7 says, surely the Most High Yahweh Shemashah will do nothing, but he revealed his secrets unto his servants the prophets. So before he sends judgment, he lets his prophets know the destruction that he's about to give, so that we can go out and give our people warning before that judgment takes place. And that's exactly what we're doing now on the highways and hedges and on these video epistles. We're giving you warning. We're blowing the trumpet before Yahweh Shemashah sends judgment. But only the elect are going to take heed to the warning. Verse 10, that in the dispensation of the fullness of times he might gather together in one all things in Hamashiach, both which are in heaven and which are on earth, even in him, in whom also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestined according to the purpose of him who worketh all things after the counsel of his own will. Okay, going to show you once again that this is not of us. And this is something that we here at Great Millstone constantly reiterate. This movement is not of us. This is nothing for us to boast in and be proud about, or even make money off of, because this isn't our word. We're simply vessels chosen to bring it out. Okay? For better or for worse, as it were. Okay? Let's get Jeremiah 1 and 5. Jeremiah 1 and 5, and then we'll jump to Isaiah 49. Okay? Jeremiah 1 and 5, which reads, and a lot of you already know where I'm going with this. It says, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. And I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. This is what YAHAWASHI is saying to Jeremiah. Before he formed thee in the belly, he already knew who it was, who he was sending to do this work. Okay, and YAHAWASHI, this is the story of each and every one of the elect. YAHAWASHI knows each and every one of us. Okay, and it's no coincidence that we are doing this work in truth and sincerity here in these end times. YAHAWASHI chose us to be the heralds of Yahweh, of the second coming of his only begotten son, YAHAWASHI. And that's a great honor through the Spirit. Lord willing, we endure. Let's get Isaiah 49:1. Going to show you that YAHAWASHI knew each and every one of the prophets he sent in their respective captivities. So us being raised up as prophets here in these last days was by design. We were predestined onto this lot. Isaiah 49, listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, ye people from far. The Lord YAHAWASHI hath called me from the womb. From the bowels of my mother hath he made mention of my name. And he made my mouth like a sharp sword, in the shadow of his hand hath he hid me, and made me a polished shaft. In his quiver hath he hid me. And he said unto me, thou art my servant, O Israel, in whom I will be glorified. And this is a beautiful revelation, going to show you that YAHAWASHI is in complete control of who he sends to do his work. And as the scriptures say, the deceived and the deceiver are his. So those that have not been called into that lot are in for a rude awakening when YAHAWASHI reveals in these last days who he has always been dealing with. So Lord willing, this lesson was edifying to the hopeful elect. I want to give all glory and honor to Yahweh, BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM REKAKWADASH. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. And peace and salutations to the hopeful elect who are continuing to fight and teach this thing of ours in truth and sincerity. This has been your brother Manat ZAQAN. Until next lesson, Shalom.